As far as I recall, the first reference to the Southern Upland Way that stuck with me was coming across Harvey's map of the trail not so long ago. Living in northern England and with a long-standing interest in the history of its relationship with Scotland, the borders in particular, I had enough references to realise that the Southern Upland Way included many places I hadn't visited, particularly those further out west. For some reason the thought stuck with me, and this year I mentioned to my wife Diane that I fancied walking it. I wasn't surprised when she said she wouldn't mind coming along, and to cut a long story short, that's why we found ourselves sitting in a comfortable room in Stranraer quaffing wine the night before starting the first section from Portpatrick on the Rins of Galloway. Because of time constraints, we decided to split the 214 miles into roughly equal halves. Portpatrick to Moffat in June-July, 9 stages, and Moffat to Cockburnspath in September in 7 stages. The whole route would be 214 miles or 344 kilometres, 26,000 feet or 7,800 metres of climbing, coast to coast, taking in 4 upland regions: Galloway Hills, Lowther Hills, Ettrick Hills and Lammermuirs. The idea was to make use of Scotland's progressive attitude to access by wild camping, but also using paid accommodation in the bigger towns as well as bothies, of which there are 5 on the route: Lagan, White Lagan, Polskeek, Brattleburn and Over Forehope. Day 1 would be fairly easy. 9.4 miles from Portpatrick back to Stranraer over a mixture of terrain with much of it on road. The first couple of miles would be along the coast, in and out several deep coves, before turning inland at Killantrigan Lighthouse. There'd be a few miles of road walking before crossing Broadmoor, then back onto the road again at Knockquasson. We'd break off from the trail at Spout Wells to walk a short distance back to the digs. We'd be travelling light with only a day sack between us containing our lunch. Unfortunately, our waterproofs never came off. After catching the bus from a stop just outside our digs in Stranraer, it was a 15-minute journey to Portpatrick.
Thank you. And now we hike back.
Cheers, thanks very much. The stormy weather was forecast to persist. Actually, it cleared up a bit once we passed the lighthouse. It seems to be typical for the region being so close to the Atlantic. But at least we had a roof over our heads when we got back. We weren't inclined to hang around though, which was another disappointment. But I went back on the bike a couple of weeks later when the weather was much better. You can see how it looked in the video linked in the description. Anyway, with that said, we'll turn to the action and let the pictures speak for themselves. know you're the ma.
Tells us what 3 words are here.
What are they?
Taps, damp, smuggled.
You're the donkey.
Yeah. Wild animals move these homes in some kists. Take a look before reaching down inside.
So we started our journey on the Southern Upland Way from the northwest corner of the inner harbour, where there's a interpretation board for the westernmost start. Then up a long flight of steps onto the headland, generally descending to the first of 4 ports, or coves, but generally referred to as ports. At least 3 of which contain an attractive beach. Portmora, round to Port Kate, then a steep climb on steps onto the headland here, and an undulating kilometre over to Port Maggie, and Killintringan Lighthouse on Blackhead. Just after the lighthouse, the road begins, where it overlooks Killintringan and Knock Bay. Very nice beaches there. And it's about 4 kilometres on the road, generally pulling uphill, before reaching a track that leads on to Broadmoor, and the highest point of the route, which is Mullockmoor. Then it's past Knockquasson Reservoir. Let's see if I can get this with a bit of light on it. Onto eventually off the moor and onto back onto agricultural land, steeply downhill to the Piltranton Burn where we had our lunch, then pulling uphill, still on road, overlooking Stranraer at this point, long kilometre there, and then downhill again onto a track that leads to a few houses at Spout Wells. This is where we left the first day. We then walked into Stranraer where we had digs.